All right. What is up, everyone? To those, we just had our introduction, but to those tuning into the recording, what's up? Welcome. As these calls go, we can, so feel free to pop questions in the chat if you have something come up along the way and don't want to remember it. We can go through those towards the middle of the call. I don't have too much to go over in the first part, but I do have a few important things to go over, and then probably 10-15 minutes, then we'll go straight into questions. So the first thing that I want to talk about is with the last few modules of the master's curriculum, it gets fairly heavy into like email marketing and automation and all of those kinds of things, and that can take a long time to build out, right? So when I was doing those things, it usually was like a weekend where I just spend all day like trying to flesh everything out, because it can get very overwhelming, especially if you have a lot of emails in, say, an email sequence, or you're just trying to build out this super complex funnel. And it's kind of sort of necessary or unnecessary. It depends on like what you are specifically doing, and just what your goals all around are. Because in this curriculum, like, I give what I personally do, and I've found that a weekly newsletter really helps in my case, right? And some people, they don't like writing a newsletter, they don't want to prioritize a newsletter, and that's completely fine. It's not necessary, but like finding your own system and how things work together uh, is always something good to do. So pertaining to like email sequences for both uh, introducing people to like your philosophy, what you do, what you talk about, kind of indoctrinating them into your worldview, or giving them a little taste of your worldview, what you talk about. Uh, that's always a good thing to do. The first email sequence, at least having a welcome sequence so people can learn more about you, is I would say the highest priority. And then after that, we talk about like a product sequence, right? So a low ticket product, anywhere from like 50 to 150 to $250, whatever it may be. And writing like 4 to 7 emails that walk people through some form of a soft sales process, um, and hopefully introducing them to your product and having them purchase it if they feel the urge to do so. And then after that, it's another like 4 to 7 emails for landing or booking calls for like a coaching or a freelancing service, right? Or just something more high ticket, because the higher the price something goes, if you don't have like an insanely large audience where you can just bank solely on numbers and low conversion rates, then it's pretty important to walk them through some form of a qualification form, talk with them personally, get on a sales call if you have to, so on and so forth. And then the purpose of the email sequence to book that appointment is to kind of automate follow-ups, because um, the the tried and true freelancing agency coaching advice is to do direct outreach. So cold email, cold DMs, whatever it may be, to at least get your foot in the door and start doing that. But when you're building an audience, you have the leverage to like have clients come to you, right? And if you walk them through some form of an email sequence, you can kind of automate that process with people that are already introduced to you, and eventually wean or work off of sending all of those cold emails or cold DMs if it fits your specific case. And so with those emails, uh, I missed the point where in freelancing agency, whatever, the cold DMs and cold emails, it's very, very important that you send follow-ups, because people miss it, right? And people tend to send follow-ups spaced out over the course of like 6 months, right? So in an appointment sequence, you're really playing the long game, where you attract them with your content, they follow you, they, let's say, join your newsletter or download a lead magnet, and then over time, they get into that appointment sequence, they learn about your service, and then over the course of 6 months, you already have the follow-ups spaced out. So rather than either manually doing it or having like a cold email software to do it with someone that doesn't even know who you are, you get people in your email sequence to go through that just automatically and potentially book calls 6 to 8 months after they follow you, right? So it's a very long-term play in getting that done. So the email sequences are optional in themselves if you, unless you find like a system that works for you, or you have the weekly newsletter or just a consistent newsletter, because in the newsletters, you're hopefully going to be plugging your products and services either throughout the newsletter or just all at the end, right? So you're going to be putting your products and services in front of dedicated readers every single week. And if you have that going, the email sequences are kind of just like a bonus on top if you want to do that, because they're going to be seeing the promotions every single week as you're dishing out all of that value, right? So if you can get into that habit of writing the weekly newsletter, make it better with time, get people talking about it, that pays off quite well. And then the other thing is, like with that, with the newsletter, the thing we've talked about throughout most of the curriculum is that you kind of form not only the content, but the promotions for the rest of the week, like from the top down. So you're promoting in the newsletter based on that topic, and then you can use that newsletter for content inspiration. So whether it be tweets, threads, whatever it may be, spread across different platforms. But then according to that, you can both plug the newsletter if it's backlogged. So people are not only joining your email list to see your promotions every single week again, but if they read through that backlog newsletter, they're going to be seeing the promotions either way. So whether or not they join the email or join the newsletter or not, plugging something every single day, whether it's a relevant backlog newsletter or a lead magnet or just your product or service, is a very good idea, right? And so in that case, the email sequences become even less viable and more of a bonus, just because you're in this consistent cycle of promotion. And the longer you do it and the more platforms that you diversify to with time, the more eyes are on those promotions and the more sales and data you're going to have to improve that product, improve conversion rates, et cetera, et cetera. And so the last thing I want to touch on relating to that is short form promotions versus long form promotions. So if you have something special coming up, we'll talk about long form promotions first. If you have something special coming up, like the launch of a course or like a Black Friday special or something, right? Something that isn't something special, I would recommend sending an email and or writing a thread or just promoting long form with the PASTOR framework, PASTOR. I linked that in the curriculum somewhere, but it's pretty easy to just search up and understand the framework in itself. But that really helps with like streamlining what you write for a longer form promotion. So if you're sending out an email, like a 500 to 600 word email that is solely a promotion for something special, use the PASTOR framework. And then every single day or in the newsletter, when you're doing a short form promotion, so when you write your newsletter and you're promoting at the end, or you have like a mid newsletter plug or something like that, AIDA, AIDA is like the most basic framework, but it works. It's just a great framework to keep in mind when you are going to write a promotion. So grabbing their attention, sparking some form of interest with like a relevant benefit to them, and then desire, those kind of overlap, and then action. So just a strong call to action, very clear, click this link if you want to learn more about that. And so that framework as well, because this is what I see a lot of people like skip over, because it gets very, when you're going through this process of posting content every day, posting a promotion under your tweets, whatever it may be, it can get very monotonous to the point where you just write a plug under your post where it's like, click this link if you want to read more. I do this all the time just because I get lazy, right? But it's made me realize, like, when I would, and this doesn't only apply to products, like if I'm promoting a podcast that I released or a YouTube video that I released in the past, I would just say new podcast is up, and it'd get maybe like 10, 20 likes. And then I'd blame it on just people not, like, Twitter throttling links posted as a tweet. But then recently, like the past 4 weeks or so, whenever I promote a YouTube video or something like that, I just take the time to see how well I can craft the message to the point of that getting more clicks, right? So ADA is usually the thing I follow. Put like a statistic to catch attention, deliver some form of value, and then lead into it. And those promotions were getting as much likes as my other tweets, right? So my YouTube or newsletter promotions were getting like 200 to 300 likes, which is good for my audience. But that's the thing here. Like, that's how much of a difference it can make to just take a step back and be very mindful when you are promoting something, and to not just like skip past everything and go straight to, hey, join this newsletter, hey, check out this product or something like that. Like, actually try to lead people and persuade them to click the link, etc., etc. So that is all I have from my notes. And this was only touching on the like promotion aspect of things, but we'll open up the floor for questions relating to anything, whether it's promotions, whether it's content, your brand, all of the above. So feel free to just unmute yourself or raise your hand. So we got Todd. What's up, man?
Figured I'd jump right in there. Yeah, so my first question, I may have a couple, is really around kind of getting started. Because I'm trying to figure out what the easiest way to get started is as far as product goes. So I'm thinking along the lines of like, coaching calls, course, an entry-level beginner course, and some type of lead magnet. And it's like, the level of effort you put into them and the cost of, let's say if I do a course like Kartra, you got to pay the monthly cost for all that stuff.
Mhm.
Versus sales is like there's a higher effort, but then at the same time, when you talk about like coaching calls being a higher ticket item, leading off with just coaching calls with a higher ticket item is not necessarily going to convert as well because you don't have the lead magnet, you don't have the course to kind of get them on the path. So I guess what are your kind of thoughts on both effort versus cost on kind of how to just get that ball rolling?
So there's a few things, right? Because with it's so variable based on like someone's individual position, but in the position where you're trying to grow an audience, you're going to productize eventually, and that's your goal, is to bank mostly on product sales. I would go straight into building the product itself and have a coaching call as like something extra on top of that. Because if you focus on the coaching call and fleshing out an entire coaching program, your time is better spent like actively trying to get customers for that, while like deprioritizing audience growth, but still like having it grow to an extent, right? So we kind of want to flip it here, and it's like prioritize audience growth, build out the product quick. And then with that, I would like take a progression approach to it. So use Gumroad because it's free. It takes a bit more of a percentage than like Stripe or PayPal, but it's free, right? And you can start getting those sales quick. And then you can even create workflows in Gumroad to send like an email 2 weeks later and be like, hey, if you need help with this, check out a coaching call. And you can even have the coaching call as an option on the Gumroad page as like a price anchor. So if if you start the product off at like $97, and then under that, it's like, here's a coaching call for $300, the $97 is going to seem a bit more affordable compared to what they would pay you to just talk to them for a call, on an hour for a call. And then from there, once that is selling more once you have the audience growing and it makes sense to invest in something like Kartra or like Go High Level or Kajabi or any of those things, then it would be pretty simple to transfer them over. And then to get sales going with that, you can leverage that because a Kartra membership is inherently more valuable than something like Gumroad, just because you have the ability to structure it out and you just have more features, right? So with that, when you do that, you can have some form of a promotion or like scarcity thing where it's like, hey, I'm moving this here, I'm adding some stuff. You can treat it as like a launch in itself, like a special promotion, and then push sales by somewhat threatening a price increase. Because I think I talked about this in the curriculum somewhere. I talk about it a lot, but starting low with your first product, especially if it's like first product, like minimum amount in there, start low, because then you have the option to increase and use those increases as like promotion firepower. But once you get to a certain cost, it's very difficult. It's not impossible, but it's very difficult to bring the price down, right? So you want to start a bit low, and then as it gets better, as you move to another platform, it makes sense to increase the price and then leverage that as scarcity for promotion. And then that alone would help justify the cost of moving on to that platform.
Yeah, because I was kind of thinking like the advantage of leading with kind of like coaching calls is well, you get potentially some income there that can also fund everything else, but also as kind of a bit of audience research, because whatever you're coaching people on goes right into the course, right? But it does make sense, but it does sound better to have the course already there as a lower price entry point for them to come in on, and then kind of upsell from there, because the coaching sounds like it should be a more premium offer, and it's tough to kind of like offer that too cheap at the beginning, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like it can go either way. Like I know it's difficult to like navigate when like a lot of people that break it down like step by step online. It's like always start with the service first. And it's like that's a great idea, but it's not the only way to do it. And like with time, it's usually going to round out to having the same product or service that you would if you started with one or the other, right? Because you can always change them along the way. So yeah, in this case, I think it would be more logical to go with the product, get that out. You can always take like free coaching calls as well for like people that you're growing with, especially in the same space, and getting testimonials for either the product or service, because that's like another thing that you can do is with the coaching calls, it makes sense because you're working one-on-one with someone and it's a lot easier to get some form of a testimonial from that. And then you can transfer that testimonial over to the product if it's very similar in nature. But you can do the same where it's like you launch the product and then maybe you throw in for the launch promotion, you throw in like free 15-minute calls to help them go over it that they can schedule at any time. If you want to do that, that can be a major time sink. But at the same time, you get that one-on-one with them, and then you can ask them for a testimonial at the end or follow up with them, because then you have someone to follow up with and they're much more likely to give you a testimonial, and then you can leverage that and just slowly up and up.
Cool. My one other question is, the one thing I'm struggling with right now, and I'm trying to figure out how to get, it's a mental block, I know, but it's just if you have any tips to get over it, is like I can sit down and go through my queue and start coming up with some tweets or some threads. But when it comes to writing the newsletter, like I've got my newsletter, I got my images done for it, but just I don't know, I feel very anxious and overwhelmed when I think to write the whole newsletter. I don't know why that's blocking me, whereas tweets and threads don't seem to block me. And I'm trying to figure out how to get unstuck with that.
Yeah. So I experienced the same thing until I like outlining and chunking it up helps so much. So like having the topic at least, and then outlining at least the key points, and then possibly searching like Google or Twitter for like tweets or just different ideas that you can include in there, and then popping that in Notion as well. And then having the outline, and then splitting it up over like 3 to 4 days. This is why I personally like outlining my newsletter on Sunday, and then I start writing on Monday, but I usually break it into 3 writing sessions. So the first one is I give myself like an hour to, and mine are long, so it doesn't have to be an hour, but like I give myself an hour to just write the first section, because from mine they usually uh have like 3 sections. They have the intro, a middle section, an end section with like actionable points. And so each of those 3 days in the hour block, I'll just write that specific part, like one block only. And then when I do that, the next day, I don't know the process that goes on in the mind, but you usually have a good idea of where you're going to start, what you can come back and put in. And it helps to give yourself more time to both write and struggle with that writing. And then the next day come back and it's like, okay, I have these better ideas. And then the third day, it's like, okay, this is actually taking a lot more shape. And then you have, depending on when you send the newsletter out, like Thursday, Friday, it's just you're going through editing, taking like 15 minutes to look it over. And then throughout the day, you'll usually have some ideas to implement in there. So that's my main way of doing it, is just break it up over 3 days, write one section at a time, and be sure to have an outline before doing that.
Okay. Yeah, because it's the initial sitting down and doing it that I get overwhelmed, just because I
Yeah.
know there's so much to write in there versus a tweet or a thread, which is easy because I can just go through the queue, pick one thing, turn it into something quick. Doesn't take as long. When you're scheduling stuff out, so like you do the newsletter and I know you do the tweets after. Um, do you do them just gradually every day, or do you like bulk and schedule a bunch of tweets from the newsletter at once for like the week? Or what's your approach to that?
It depends. I've been like trying a bunch of different things. Like sometimes if I like write the newsletter and the sentence I wrote or something like that is a tweet in itself, then I'm like, okay, yeah, that's going in Tweet Hunter immediately. But aside from that, because I throw in tweets here and there as well. Like it's not all from my newsletter. It's just like if this comes to mind, yeah, I'm going to schedule it as a tweet. But other than that, what I've been doing recently, because I've struggled with it, is going on a walk, of course, but you could do this like anywhere, is I go on a walk and then I'll like read the newsletter from my phone since it's backlogged. And then like on the walk as I'm reading, it's like, okay, this idea that would go well in a tweet. And I can usually bust out like 10 tweets plus doing that, because more start to flow, especially on a walk. But like that's the main thing, is I'll read it. You could just sit on the couch and read it if you want, either way. But read it and then plug it into Tweet Hunter and give yourself 30 minutes, because more ideas will come to mind.
Cool. All right. Thank you very much.
No problem. All right, Josh, what's up?
How you doing, man? Um, so for me, I'm looking at like the next year. I don't really like plan on like monetizing or selling anything yet. Um, More than anything, I'm just gonna focus on like growth. So, I am thinking about like setting aside like a budget each month for like shares and everything like that, or retweets. I think it's probably going to be somewhere between like 500 to 1,000. I think is good. I think from what you actually this earlier, and as you said, it was like a good idea. Like, but how do I look for these people to retweet the things that I want them to retweet, and then like how would I like structure the conversation to make it so I'm actually getting the most from my money that I'm investing. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So the people that you'd reach out to, I'd filter it down to like people you trust. So people you already follow, start there. So I would I would personally aim for like personal brands, people with their name and their photo, but anonymous brands work as well if they're like, if you like their content and you would like to have some of their audience, right? So it's really dependent on like who you follow, whose content you actually like. And it doesn't really matter if the content aligns with yours, because like if we're shooting more beginner level at the start, most people can become interested in those things and you can introduce them to your interests. And it's just leverage for future. So that's the thing is like, I don't have too much of a structure aside from like, hey, I like what this guy's doing. I want a piece of his audience. I'm just going to DM him. And then when you DM him, just be like, hey man, be honest, like really inspired by your work, love following you, love the audience that you've built. And I'm trying to grow my own. And I'm setting aside some money each month to like make that happen. Do you offer anything that would help with growth? And so that's kind of the main thing. You could, like, people say, I know Joey and I have both talked about this before, where it's like Twitter can ban you for talking about retweets in the like DMs. And I personally haven't seen that. Like, yeah, be cautious, but like I've done it with Zuby, where like I reached out to him and he was like, yeah, man, like let's do it right here. And he sent the invoice in Twitter, and then he was like going through the tweets in Twitter itself. And so Zuby is like very well read on Twitter's terms of service because he doesn't want to get banned. And it's like he was doing that no problem. So that's the main thing, is like, don't worry about it too much. But if you can like take the conversation to Telegram or something, yeah, that's a better bet. And then, as Jimmy said in the chat, it's definitely better to pay 1 to 2 people for like 20 to 30 retweets at a time, because it's going to cost a lot less in the long run rather than paying for like one at a time. And it's going to be more incentive. It's going to be more incentive for them to actually like work with you on it, right? Because you're going to be paying a higher ticket package for that, where those accounts feel like they have something on the line for actually getting you results with those retweets.
I like that. That's really awesome to hear right there. And then like the other question would be, would you prefer if you're trying to get someone to retweet something? Are you looking more to like have like some thread, like a few threads put together for that? When you're talking about what you're trying to get them to retweet, that would be like the most productive thing to do. Something heavy like that.
Most productive, yeah. I would say anything that you know will bring in more followers, because like when I was doing it, I knew which tweets of mine did pull in the most followers in the past, and that if I got more eyes on that, it would have just enhanced that. So
Okay.
I rewrote those tweets when the time came, and I just made sure that I was consistently sending them content that I knew would do like above average in pulling in followers. Because with the threads, like a good strategy with the threads is it's like you want multiple people to retweet them. One works, but if you can pay like 4 people to retweet it, then that works even better. But then you're not getting like that package deal. So I'd personally recommend just like getting more on people's radars. So keeping the content flow going, where you have like tweets every day, maybe a thread a week, something like that. When the thread goes out, send them the thread. But then every day have some tweet that you think will do really well, and then send that tweet to them. And then over the course of like 30 days plus, like the more you are in front of one specific audience, the more you're going to kind of exhaust that audience, right? Like some people are going to see your content and they're either going to follow or they're not going to follow. And then with time, and as they're more exposed to that content over 30 days, you're going to have a good estimate of how many of those followers are going to transfer over. And then you can go to someone else and kind of exhaust that little threshold that will follow you based on your content, and then kind of circle back around. So to me, it's better to pay someone like different every month for like 3 months, and then circle back, and then like repeat that process as their audiences are also growing, because then there's going to be new people in that audience that could follow you that didn't follow you before. And you want to just give people a break from seeing your content if they're not going to follow either way, right?
Yeah. Gotcha. Okay. Well, thank you for that. I really appreciate that. Like, we don't have a question, but like just like an idea. Like this is what I'm thinking. Like over like my goal is just over the year, like to really build up. Because I'm at like 100 followers now. So my goal is to get to like at least close to like 100, like in that 80 to 100 range, and then from there monetize it. So that way it's like I've built something there and it's a little easier to sell something. It's not like, it won't be as hard, if that makes sense. And even then I
Mhm.
can sell retweets. So like it would still be
Right.
easier because I will be going back to school. So yeah.
Nice. No, that's a good plan. And by then as well, you'll have so much content that will do well that it'll be easier to like ideate a product or service around that angle, because then it's like you just rewrite the viral thread or something like that and then plug it under, and it's like much more likely to sell that way.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that.
No problem. All right, Owain, what's up?
Hello. Yeah, so I'm planning on going down the mental clarity and lifestyle design route, and it's around that. I've got a few mentors in mind, including Justin Scott, Limitless Reader, and Takezo. And I was just wondering if you have any other accounts in mind who are also doing a similar thing.
Joey, feel free to chime in as I'm thinking. I know System Sunday. System Sunday,
Okay.
he's growing way too quick. But his threads, like, I'm trying to learn from him because recently, like, I've been trying to, for the longest time, like, I've been trying to write like long, in-depth threads, and they do well here and there, but it's really hard to sustain on a weekly basis on top of the newsletter. And so, like, my challenge this week throughout December is to limit threads that I write to just 10 tweets. Dude, his threads are like 6 to 10 tweets long every single time, and they pop off every day, like 10K plus likes each. Like, yeah, some of them are the top 10 free websites you can like learn today, but a lot of them are like good productivity, lifestyle, mental clarity systems, like mental models in that case, and those do incredibly well. So if you can emulate him, that's a great way to grow because he's growing really fast on all platforms. So System Sunday, I know like James Clear, like bigger accounts, James Clear, Tim Ferriss doesn't really talk about it, but like his books would align with that. Really any author that you would like to read and you can find there. But other than that, I'm kind of out of touch. Joey, if you're here, do you know any?
Yeah, there's one good one that I like because he has a lot of like neuroscience and stuff in his content. Spartan Psyche. I'm gonna put his link in the Zoom chat. I'm a big fan of what he does. He writes really good threads. Talks a lot about a lot of stuff that resonates with like productivity and things like that. So I check him out. He's the main one. I haven't seen many people lately that are many other people who are really focused on that stuff lately.
Okay, thank you very much, guys. Thank you.
Yep. I think that's a good sign too. Like if we
Yeah.
can't think of anyone, it's like it sounds like it crosses over into productivity, but it's a different space. And like that just means there's a lot more potential there for growth by taking that angle. Like the lifestyle design angle or designing an intentional life is a great angle to go that is like slightly different from productivity, self-improvement, etc. It's like a newer, more novel category that helps you like illustrate those what could be basic points in a more like meaningful way.
Okay, I appreciate it, guys. Thank you.
No problem. All right, Alan, what's up?
What's going on? I hope all is well.
You
So
too, man.
I just got a quick question in terms of making a killer newsletter, a killer blog, right? And so I'm just starting out. Obviously, I don't have much experience when it comes to blogging newsletters. So I know it comes over time, but I'm just wondering, like, kind of what's your mindset when it comes to making a newsletter? Because when I go and I'm getting ideas together and concepts, and I'm able to get a lot of good concepts and ideas, when I try to make my blog, I'm trying to make it in my own voice, but sometimes based on the information that I get, it kind of sounds like I'm like kind of copying the idea in a sense, and it's not unique in a way. And so I'm just wondering, like, kind of what's your idea? Is it more of a thing when you're making a blog or newsletter that is, oh, I'm just gathering information and then I'm just kind of explaining it in my own way, but it's still the information that I'm getting is the key thing that people are looking for. But I'm just kind of like, I'm just kind of like stretching it in my own way.
Yeah. So I kind of think it's necessary. Like, as long as you aren't clearly like copying word for word and like actually trying to articulate it in your own voice, like even if it sounds like someone else's voice, that's how you understand it. And that's how other people are going to understand it that like resonate with you. Right. And then over time, it will slowly become more and more of your natural language. And you'll write, like when you go to write someone else and you remember that concept, like 3 months down the road, and then you just write it out, no problem. That's like when it becomes in your own voice. So to me, and like what has helped me a lot is just kind of writing it in the way that you understand it right now, regardless of if it doesn't sound like you or not yet, right? Because that just means it's kind of like a new concept in your mind and you're still learning how to articulate that. So I wouldn't worry too much about it. If you want, you can always plug. This doesn't take away from the newsletter at all. I would argue that it enhances it, is just being like, I learned about this through this book or this something, right? And just like give that subtle plug. And like, and then in that case, it helps justify it to your mind that it's like, okay, yeah, this is a good way of writing it. But it also shows that like it's more credible, right? You're like linking a source and people are like, oh, okay, this idea was already written somewhere else. So it has that authority behind it. And so I'm going to listen to this more. Like, thank you for introducing me to this. And so that's the main thing I would do, because like you can also just sit with it and try and write it out like a bunch of different times until you like get it in the words that you like it in. But that really comes with like time and awareness, where it's like you connect that idea to something else and then you're like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. And then it just flows out of you. So I'd give it time, and I wouldn't worry too much about it not sounding exactly like you yet.
Okay, that makes sense. That's true. And then eventually when I get to the point of like making my own product, and I know you kind of touched on this earlier a bit too, right? Is that when you start developing your own product and developing your own courses, then the idea is kind of the same as well. Because like for myself, when I'm going to be building courses or building products, the idea of how I want to approach it is try to get as much information as possible that is helpful to whatever problem that I'm trying to solve, right? And so, so like you mentioned, it could be the same thing where it's like if I'm trying to write in my own voice, then eventually it will come with experience. But the most important thing is to, I guess, give them all the information that they need for the most part, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
And it's
Yeah,
like
so-
in the product, it's also wise to link like references where, how do I put it? Like the courses are aggregation. And yes, it makes sense to be able to write and teach everything in your own words. And that's great. And it is still in your own words, technically. But like people know that everyone gets ideas from other people. That's how we learn. And it's helpful to give them something to research further if they want to go and like look at the reference. What was I going to say? It's like, I know some people, or I don't know some people, I've seen before where people will sell products where it's just like aggregation of different points with their commentary, where it's like, here's the 10 steps. This is an example, but it's like 10 steps to building a freelance business, something like that. And then you give the 10 steps, but then you link to like other things where you learn those steps. And it's like that's kind of the exaggerated version of like not really creating it yourself. But it just goes to show that like it is wise and good to just link references, especially when you either feel like you can't articulate it fully, or if you just feel like you need to include the reference.
Right. Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. Thank you.
Cool. No problem. All right. How do you say your name, man? Is it Gies?
Yeah, it's actually pronounced Gijs, but it's a Dutch name.
Gijs.
So
Nice.
yeah, that's pretty. Yeah, it's sometimes they say it's like ice with a G, so it's Gijs.
Nice.
Yeah. So what I'm struggling with right now is that I'm pretty decent already on Instagram. I have like 2,300 followers there. And I really started my Twitter account when we did the course somewhere around there. But it just got really demotivating because there's a lot of stuff that I want to share, which is also musically related, or it's not really particularly in text, or I'm doing some stuff with poetry and some things that I really couldn't fit in, or I couldn't find some profiles that I could relate to. But one of the things that you emphasize is that it's really important to follow the formulas that work, that especially on Twitter, just try to copy some of the list, and then before you go into your own stuff, because that's not how it works. Only I really struggle with, I have like 90 followers now on Twitter and I'm like, yeah, so I'm putting all this effort in. I would rather just focus a little bit more on Instagram right now, because I hope I can get some more momentum, but I want to grow on Twitter, and also because I love the atmosphere, the infrastructure, the ways of communicating a lot more. I haven't just explored that already, but I find it hard to get my message across, or get the following or the consistency in there. Yeah, so I was wondering if you maybe have some tips for that, or how to approach that.
Yeah. So in general, it's with Instagram, like if you have posts that you know are doing well, it's usually going to be the same thing on something like Twitter, right? So if something is working on Instagram and you don't want to like have like a split strategy for either, you can focus your effort on Instagram and then either like somehow reword it or like create that content, because it could be vastly different, who knows, but create that content in a form that would do well on Twitter. And then you could prioritize some growth on Twitter, like if you have the time or just want to reply to people, do something like that. But if things are going well on Instagram, I would definitely double down on that, get the ideas and the content validated and know which of your ideas or content do best. And then you can start to transfer those over. And when you have more time to put into Twitter, or want to put more time into Twitter in terms of growth, then you can just get more eyes on that content. And hopefully it will, I'm sure it will follow the same pattern as Instagram, because content is content, and it's really just dependent on like the medium that content is presented in, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's I'm also really struggling with just the message, like what do I want to say and how do I want to say it? Because a lot of the things I talk about, some of them can be considered controversial, and that is most of the time not a smart thing to do, but I find I have a big drive to express these kind of things, and I really respect and value people that do the same. And yeah, much respect to you for blending in this message, you know, about how to maneuver in this system where the odds can be stacked against you, you know, and turning it into a power and a drive. That is something I find really fascinating. But yeah, finding the tone of voice and the right messaging is something that I've been really shaping and trying to get a hang with. Actually today I recorded some videos also to just get that out there and get over my self-consciousness, because I can be and I'm sure this is relatable to a lot of people. As soon as you start being self-conscious and judging yourself and getting stuck in the mud and just turning your wheels without making any progress, that's that's a tough one, but yeah, thank you for confirming that. Just focusing on Instagram then is the best part to do. But still, I want to take the challenge of growing on Twitter and see how much progress I can make there.
Yeah. How about this? For Twitter, since it's more of like a controversial place, controversy and just polarization in general gets rewarded very well on Twitter.
Mhm.
So while you're at that 90 follower range and like not too many people are watching, refine that voice, just like practice writing the controversial takes that you want to write. And some of them
Mhm.
may pick up, who knows? But at the same time, I feel like that would be a good way to practice that and just structure the message that you're putting across in that condensed format. And then you'll get better at that with time and eventually find an angle where you feel comfortable like telling that to a lot more people.
Got you. Okay, thanks, man.
No problem. All right, Harry, what's up?
Hey Dan, what's up? A logistical question. I think I've done stuff before that's courses, and I think where I'm getting a little bit of traction is as a talk I gave at a podcast conference recently about some sponsor, how to get sponsors for your podcast. So I'm thinking an easy way to do that is something along the lines of a low ticket item like a blueprint. But are you using Kartra for your landing page stuff, or is there just like a really simple way to get something up and running that's not too not a lot of overhead? Because I tend to overthink these things and I just try to over engineer it, and I'm just looking for like the easiest way to get something up so I can validate the idea and then spend some time on the sales copy.
Yeah. All right. I think I fixed the screen sharing option. So let me see if I can actually do this. Chrome, this site. Yes. Oh, it works. Okay. So Card is your best friend.
Okay.
So card.co. It's like, I'm pretty sure I'm logged in, but yeah. So Card, it's like, I would recommend getting the highest version, which is, I think it's like 47 to 97 a year for the best version, but there's a reason behind the best version. You could do like something super simple and build it out yourself with like the $9 a year version. But Components UI is where is it? Something changed with Google today. Oh, I swear I was trying to search something earlier and it like showed nothing. But okay, so card.co or Components UI, which is just templates like for it itself. And there's me. But because I genuinely love this thing, I use it for every single website. But pretty much what it does is you have to get the highest version so you can like transfer so they can transfer the page to you, and then you get a page where it's just like, okay, the background is black, but oh my goodness. Okay. So it just gives you like a page on a Card with all of different things like this, where it's like graphics, headline, subheadline, like a features section with images, icons, like buy packages. And then there's some that aren't here because I just dragged them up and turned them into the landing page itself. But you get Components UI, and then they transfer it over to your Card account. And then you just duplicate the page itself. So like this, you get it in the form like this, and then duplicate this, and you just change it to fit however you want it. And I only have 2 versions. I have like this first version and then the second version, but I'm pretty sure they came out with like a bunch more with like dark mode and cool things like that. So that's pretty much what I'd recommend, because for card, it's really fast. It can integrate with most things, whether it be like manually or included in card. It's affordable, it's clean, and it just makes sense for me, at least, to have like all landing pages in card, because most other landing page builders have like their downsides because they're included with so many other things. So card is my recommendation.
Is components.ai the template?
Yeah.
So you're looking for the design components, and then you're finishing the build in card.
Yeah. So components UI is, I'm pretty sure they have like their own card account where they just build out the templates and then send it to people that buy. So yes, but components UI isn't necessary. It's just like the perfect starting place for me on most landing page. And then all I have to do is change colors, change font, change some background colors. That's really it.
Is card, because you mentioned Gumroad, would you recommend that you handle the entire transaction within the card template, or does the card then redirect to Gumroad for the execution of the funds, or how's that work?
Yeah. So what I do for like affiliates, so I'll just duplicate the page, and then have like a different domain, and then in Gumroad, well, this is for affiliates, but you like just use that as the link that affiliates would send to. And then all I personally do is you add a Gumroad script. I believe there's instructions in Gumroad to do this.
Okay.
I don't even think you need the Gumroad script anymore. Maybe you do. But then you just add it to the button.
Okay.
Yeah, so you add that to the button, and that'll either send them to the checkout directly. There's definitely a script somewhere that I don't know where it is, but then this should just like pop up. And what I do in Gumroad for this specifically, if I have a landing page, is I'll create a separate product for the landing page alone, because then if you have like all of the copy right here, it just doesn't, it'll just like lead them down even more. So treat this as a checkout page and just have like the call to action to click, I want this, or add to cart, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Does that help?
Yeah, and as far as pricing, I think you just alluded to it in an earlier question, but it's better to just maybe do something at like $97 just to gauge interest, and then slowly work it up as you see people giving you feedback on it.
Yeah, so I'd say that. But if you want, you can start at like 47, like pre-sale, or like 50, 47 pre-sale, and then like during a launch, like I'm a big fan of like just squeezing the most out of that, because that's the lowest price that people are going to get it at, and you have the most promotional firepower with the scarcity. So starting it with like a week, like a launch week where it's 47, and then you can be like, the price is going up after this weekly special to 97, and that scarcity, it pulls in a lot more sales. So if you can leverage that however you can in an ethical and non-annoying way, then I would.
Okay.
Cool.
All
Is that
right,
everything?
thank you. Yeah, that's good.
Nice. All right, Moritz, what's up?
I excuse my voice today. Yeah, I wrote my first newsletter and also plugged in my lead magnet, and yeah, I subscribed several times with some email addresses to see how it's delivered, and I'm doing it with, I was doing it with Ghost, and yeah, I just realized that it wasn't delivered properly, right? So less than 50% received it from the email addresses. And then I also asked some Twitter buddies that I knew that they subscribed, and they said they haven't received it. and I also couldn't find it in the spam or in the trash. So I was just wondering if there's any, because also the analytical tools in this program told me that they received it and 88% opened it. So I was really confused. And I was just wondering if you heard of the same problems, or do you use some analytical tool? Because so far all I read about ghosts seem to be pretty interesting. So I wanted to give it a try, particularly also since review will go offline, as I understood. And yeah, I just wanted to know your opinion and maybe some recommendation for some analytical tool to, well, it's annoying to write something and then it doesn't get delivered properly.
Yeah, I could imagine. So first thing I would do is probably reach out to Ghost support and see what's going on.
Yeah.
And like if there's anything wrong that happened there, and like if it's a fluke or just a one-time thing, who knows? The second thing is I would put a lot of effort into getting people to check spam and reply to the email itself. At least when they join the list, right? So when they join the list, they get taken to like some form of a thank you page. And on that thank you page, like just give them very clear steps on what to do. So be like, we just sent you an email. Be sure to check your spam. If it's in spam, just drag it out of the spam folder. If it was in a promotions tab, drag it over into a regular tab. And then lastly, can you just reply letting me know that you got it? And then that's really it, because that will help slowly increase deliverability. Now, like the 50% delivering thing, that sounds wild to me. Like I haven't heard that before. So I'm hoping it's a thing with Ghost, like in their support. If it's an ongoing thing, I would personally go to like Beehive, because from what I've recommended, it seems like most people are happy with that. But then the other thing that comes to mind is, what are you sending from like an @Gmail email, or are you sending from like you@yourcompany.com email?
It's actually, so far I'm having a Gmail email that you can then put into Ghost so that it looks like it was sent from this company email at Gmail.
Okay. That should work. Yeah, I'd reach out to Ghost and really just like try to guide them through as with the most clarity and like actionable points you can. Guide them toward dragging things out of spam, double checking, letting you know what goes wrong, and replying if replying to the email.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. And another thing, I'm very interested in this true wealth, financial freedom space, and things connected with that. And I was just wondering whether you can point me to some accounts that you find particularly interesting. Also, because you probably, or how I understand this, like on Twitter, you start posting very beginner stuff, but then you also don't want to just publish platitudes, right? So just maybe you have some accounts in mind where they pretty good bridge that gap between writing not platitudes, but also giving true wealth advice.
Naval, for sure. I feel like Naval is up there because he's he's like the umbrella of almost every Twitter account by now, but it's hard for people to pull off that same tone and actually have the point get across. So he's someone to study and like just get inspiration from in terms of like wording, right? Because his stuff doesn't sound basic, at least to me. Jimmy Mackey mentioned Steve on Speed. He's a great guy. Joey, do you know anyone? I'm so bad at thinking on the fly.
Justin
Jack
Welsh,
Butcher.
Jack Butcher.
Yeah.
JK Molina posts some pretty good stuff and retweets a lot of good people.
Okay. Yeah, I'm trying to. I'm like slowly becoming more and more out of touch. I can't tell if that's good or bad, but Steve wants to be. Yeah, I would say start with those main people. Like my favorite thing is like I like having people to interact with, engage with, and just follow for inspiration on Twitter. But most of my ideas come from like books, the books that I really like, or like even short form summaries or long YouTube videos, like something with length where then I can extract the big idea and then put it in the, like use a tweet structure or something similar to get that point across and have it do well on Twitter in that space. Because then it's kind of new too, because a lot of people, and I have nothing against this, but you can kind of tell when there's like a specific wave going on in Twitter where someone talks about a good idea and then other people follow, and then it just like you get trapped in this like circle of the same idea said 1,000 different ways, like all at once. But then if you're like reading books or YouTube or something that isn't on Twitter and bring that fresh perspective, that's really how you stand out, in my opinion.
Awesome. Really appreciate it. Thanks.
No problem. All right, Jimmy, what's up?
Yo. Let me pull my notes up. Can you still see me?
Yep.
All right, cool. For the emails, my offer stack is literally just the lead mag and then high ticket coaching. Would you just do the reality sequence and then the appointment sequence?
Yes.
Or would you have one for the lead mag, like a product sequence for the lead mag?
No, I would mention it in the intro sequence where
Okay.
like if they don't get to the intro sequence from downloading the lead magnet, just be like, hey, read this first before anything, just so they increase awareness levels and be that much more ready to receive the appointment sequence emails.
Okay, easy. And then second question is for Joey, if that's cool.
Yeah.
I'm trying to improve my my writing volume. I was wondering if you had some tips on, like a daily schedule or something like that, Joey.
Yeah, definitely. So do you know if you're a morning person or more of a night owl?
Definitely a morning person. Like my
Alright.
best writing is from like 5:30 to 8:30.
Perfect. So if you know
But
J.K. Molina,
also, I can
Yeah.
really write like from 8 to 10 p.m. But like midday, trash.
That's how I am.
that's actually somewhat normal. So if you know J.K. Molina, one of the original ghostwriters on Twitter, I worked with him both as one of his writers and his performance coach for a while. And so this strategy like 4x his output. Basically, you want to design your schedule so you're drafting in the afternoon or in the evening. So you're not trying to write a finished product, you're just getting some stuff out. And you want to write as much as possible without judgment, basically. That sounds kind of cringe, but you want to just get stuff out, because the problem is that we get in our head, like somebody kind of mentioned earlier, once we start thinking about it too much, then our content volume really drops. Like I've struggled with that numerous times. So you want to just get some stuff out. And then in the morning, you want to come back and you want to edit that. And that's when you're really going to be taking that stuff, those drafts, and turning it into something like usable. This has a couple reasons why this works. One, coming back with a fresh perspective when you're writing something is almost always superior to just writing it once and being done. Two, it works with how your brain works. So the brain has a few different networks of regions. One's called the default mode network. The DMN is very random, chaotic, which also means creative, but it's more active when we're not really focused on something, right? So if I was like trying to write something, but I was also listening to a TV show, or that's not a great example, like walking is the best example, really. Shower thoughts.
Shower thoughts.
Yeah, so you're not really focused on anything, and that gives your brain and the DMN time to just kind of mash stuff together and let you know if there's anything that really stands out that seems interesting. There's a part of your brain responsible for doing even that alert system. So that's what you're using at night when you, and for actual night owls, this would be reversed. Okay. So there are night owls, but for morning people, if you're kind of like brainstorming, drafting later in the day, not really forcing it, then you'll be able to use the DMN a little bit more. Then in the morning, when you come back and edit, you're going to be using the task positive network. So the task positive network is very linear, it's very structured. It's also why it's very difficult to like force yourself to be like divergently creative, if you will. Force yourself to come up with ideas. So this strategy really uses like both of those networks of your brain, and that will definitely improve the content volume and quality as well.
Okay. So right first thing in the morning and super late at night, and then like in the afternoon when I'm somewhat useless, just kind of put some shitty drafts together.
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah, whenever
Alright,
you
cool.
feel like your energy and focus is the lowest, do your like brainstorming and drafting then. Just like bullet points, just like garbage on the page or in Notion. And then whenever you feel your focus returning, that's when you want to really be like, all right, well, I'm going to turn this into something now.
Okay, that's awesome. And then any tips in terms of like the actual brainstorming and outlining to make the writing process go faster?
So for that, I would like Dan talks a lot about the one big idea. So I would think about like what your one big idea is, like literally write it at the top of your page. Like I've seen Dickie Bush and Nicholas Cole talk about this too, but like write the big idea at the top of the page and then do some bullet points, right? So, and you can even use the new Chat GPT, OpenAI, whatever the hell, to just like get some bullet points, right? And then expand upon it. So you're kind of like building up the skeleton first, and then you're really just putting some meat on the bones. And then later on, when you have that energy, you can really refine it. And it sounds like this is a similar process to what Dan does with his newsletter, kind of. But you really just want to like get the skeleton first, and that can change, of course, but start there. Because see, another metaphor that I love that I heard David Perel talk about this. So it's the printer method versus the pixel method. So the printer method of writing is you're just like, I'm going to write it line by line, paragraph by paragraph, like start to finish. And that's very hard to do. The pixel method is I'm going to do a little bit here and a little bit there and a little bit there. And then over time, the picture is going to get clearer and you're going to have a better finished product. So if you think about it like that, where at first you're just taking a blank page, you have a skeleton, a big idea, some bullet points, fill it in as you go. And then during those really focused periods, you can refine that and then make it better.
Okay. Yeah, that's helpful. Do you use Smart Notes at all?
I don't. I tried to use the Zettelkasten method. Didn't really work for me. So that's why Dan and I are working on something to replace that.
Okay. Yeah, I tried Smart Notes, but then I just started using the Discovery template. I find that much better for me.
Yeah.
All right, guys.
Soon.
Thank you.
Yep.
We will soon have something,
Yep.
and it will change the game, hopefully, if AI doesn't destroy our idea. But yeah. All right. So any last questions before we wrap things up?
I just thought I'd throw a quick one because people are asking for recommended follows. So I'm looking for anyone kind of in the leadership space. So I've got people like Jacob Espinoza, Jasper Pollock, a lot of people in the space are just authors that don't tweet that much, like Jocko Willink. Any recommendations for anyone else in that space?
Stephen Timoney. I don't think he's
Yeah, got him.
Success Theory anymore. Later, Jimmy. But I'm trying to think. Leadership. I personally don't know. I worked with Steven, and I told him to like not use leadership lingo because I feel, yeah, I don't know. So maybe like I'm sure there's a lot of people that talk about similar topics, but it's under like a different lens.
What would you see it under?
So with him, it was more so like self leadership, or I don't know. The self leadership kind of, to me, goes into like self-improvement, self-development, right? Rather than like managing a team or something like that. So that's kind of it. I don't know. I don't know much about the leadership space at all. Like when I hear the word leadership, it just goes out the other side of my brain. Personally.
Yeah, it's interesting because there's a lot of big authors, but they're not really active on Twitter. And then there's like a handful of Twitter people who are very active and who have grown pretty big. So it doesn't seem to be quite as big a space yet as a lot of the other ones.
It's a good sign.
Cool, thank
Very
you.
good sign. Yep. I wish I could help more. I just don't
Well,
know
hey,
too
if
many
there's not that
people.
many, there's not that many. But I just thought
Yeah.
maybe I'm just missing it. I just want to have huge blind spots or anything, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's helpful to like even just the top dogs. Like if you know who the top dogs are, then they're usually pretty good to emulate and follow along. And the people interacting with them, like in their replies, like the people that get decent engagement or you see them show up time and time again in the replies, they're usually talking about very similar things, and then you can network with them and then just build up.
Cool. Yeah, because it bleeds over into like the product management space as well. So picked up a few from there as well.
Nice. Cool. All right. Well, I will